If you clicked on this video, it's likely because you're an atheist. I'm not here to convince you otherwise if you think that's what I'm about to do. What I actually want to do is answer some of the really hard questions that I had to ask myself about God when I was an atheist, or rather agnostic. The first 18 years of my life I spent as an atheist. I rejected the idea that God could be possibly real, that some magical man in the sky creating everything literally makes no sense. Even when some of it started to make sense, I still considered myself agnostic for a very long time. I stayed open-minded to the idea and the possibility that God could be real, but I never fully accepted it as truth. I'm not here to tell you God is real. I'm not here to tell you that you should believe, and I'm not here to convince you otherwise. I'm simply here to give you some of the really hard questions that I had to ask and the answers for them. Because when I was agnostic, I asked these questions, and the only reason I stayed agnostic for so long is because nobody else could answer these questions for me, or at least I couldn't find anybody to answer these questions for me. So here is the top 10 questions that I asked, and I'm going to give you the answers for each of them. And like I said, not trying to convince you, I just want to see what you think about it. The way I'm going to do this is I have the questions and answers written down in my notes, as well as really simple examples or analogies to explain the answers to the questions. Number 1, why did God create humans in the first place? God did not create humans because he needed us, was lonely, or was incomplete. Christianity teaches that God is already perfect and lacks nothing. He created because love naturally desires to share itself. Creating humanity was an act of generosity, inviting people into relationship with him and allowing them to share in his goodness. Imagine you bake the world's best cookies. You don't bake them because you're hungry, you bake them because you want everyone else to enjoy them too. God didn't create people because he needed them, he created them because he wanted to share his goodness. Number 2, why didn't God create humans perfect just like himself? Christianity says there's a difference between being good because that is your eternal nature and being created already unable to do evil. God is the first one. Humans would have been the second. If humans had been created already incapable of evil, their goodness would have simply have been given to them rather than freely embraced. Christianity argues that there is unique value in freely growing into goodness rather than simply possessing it automatically. Imagine two kids receive a gold medal. One kid's dad glued the medal onto his shirt, the other kid trained every day and earned it. Both have a medal, but only one actually became the kind of person who earned it. Christianity says becoming good is different from simply being made good. If God can't sin, does he actually have free will? Yes. Free will is not the ability to do absolutely anything. Free will is acting according to your own desires without someone forcing you. God always chooses good because that's what he genuinely wants. No one forces him to choose good, therefore his choices are still free. Imagine your favorite food is pizza. Someone asks, would you rather eat broccoli flavored toothpaste? You could say yes, but you genuinely don't want to. Nobody forced your answer, you freely chose what you actually wanted. Number 4, if God can only choose good, isn't he basically programmed? No. Programming means an outside source determines how something behaves. God has no creator, nothing designed him, nothing programmed him. His goodness isn't something that was installed into him, it is simply his eternal nature. Imagine a robot that says, I love you. It only says that because someone programmed it. Now imagine your mom says, I love you. Nobody programmed her. She says it because she genuinely wants to. Christianity says God is like your mom in this example, not the robot. Number 5, is God capable of doing evil? No. Not because he lacks power, not because someone prevents him, but because evil is contrary to his nature. God is perfectly good. Doing evil would contradict what he eternally is. Can the sun decide to become darkness? No. Darkness isn't something the sun does. The sun shines because that's what it is. Christianity says goodness is what God is. Number 6, if God can't do evil, why couldn't he create us that way too? Christianity says there's a difference between God, whose perfect nature exists necessarily, and humans, whose nature would have been created that way. God's goodness belongs to him by nature. Human goodness, if created that way from the beginning, would have been given rather than freely developed. Christianity argues that freely growing into goodness has value than that simply possessing it from birth does not. Imagine two artists. One prints a beautiful picture by pressing one button. The other spends years learning to paint before creating something beautiful. Both made beautiful art, but one grew into becoming an artist. Christianity says humans are meant to grow into goodness rather than simply have it pre-installed. Number 7, does temptation come from Satan or from ourselves? Both. Humans have internal desires that pull them towards selfishness and sin. Satan and other external influences can tempt people. Neither one forces anyone to sin. Every person still freely chooses how they respond. Imagine you already want a cookie before dinner. Then your friend says, "Go ahead, nobody will know." Your friend didn't create your desire, he simply encouraged it. You still decide whether to eat the cookie. Number 8. Why did God choose this reality instead of another possible reality? Unfortunately, Christianity doesn't give a definitive answer to this question. One common idea is that God chose the world that ultimately leads to the greatest amount of love, goodness, justice, and relationship with Him. However, this cannot be proven and remains one of the deepest unanswered philosophical questions in Christianity. Imagine your dad drives home using a road you've never taken. You ask, "Why didn't we take the shorter road?" He says, "I have a reason." Maybe later you learn there was a huge traffic jam on the other road. Sometimes you don't know the reason until much later. Number 9. If heaven has free will but no sin, why didn't God create Earth like that in the first place? Christianity teaches that people in heaven still have free will. However, they have been completely transformed and no longer desire sin. Why God did not begin creation in that final perfected state is not explicitly answered in Scripture. Many Christian philosophers have proposed explanations, but there is no universally accepted answer. Imagine your teacher gives everyone months of practice before the championship game. You ask, "Why not just let us win the championship today?" The teacher replies, "Because the practice matters." The obvious next question is, why does the practice matter? That's where Christianity doesn't give a complete answer. Last but not least, number 10. What would actually justify believing in God rather than just blind faith? Christianity does not define faith as believing without evidence. Faith is trusting something because there are sufficient reasons to believe it is true. The goal is not absolute certainty. The goal is determining whether Christianity best explains reality, history, morality, human nature, and existence compared with every competing worldview. If it does, then belief is reasoned trust, not blind faith. Imagine your dad says, "Jump, I'll catch you." So you jump. Not because you can mathematically prove he'll catch you. Not because you're blindly guessing. You jump because he's caught you 100 times before. Your trust is based on evidence, not blind faith. Personally, this is one of my favorite videos to create because I get to share the really hard questions that I had to ask myself about Christianity that personally made no sense. And I know that a couple of them are unanswered and there aren't complete and full reasons for them, but not every question needs an answer. There are plenty of questions that we ask ourselves in life that still don't have answers, but we still give our faith to and we still trust. If by some miracle these 10 questions alone were enough to convert you to Christianity, that would be a blessing from God. But like I said, the purpose wasn't to convert anybody, but I hope that this plants the seed in some type of way. These were really difficult questions for me, and I'm sure that to some extent you have also asked yourself these same questions, and I hope that my answers to these and my examples for the answers gave you some insight to think on. God bless you. God bless everybody who's watching this. God bless the world. Take care.